A little gem. I mean, this needs to be
accessible to everybody.
Absolutely.
It should be. We're fighting really hard to get music therapy reimbursed in insurance throughout the country, both for mental health and for medical, treatments as well as early childhood development. This should be something. There's enough science that backs it up. The NIH has helped us in the past, focusing and supporting research efforts to show the efficacy of the integration of neuroscience and clinical music therapy to advance care in all these areas. But we need to get the word out.
All right, ladies and gents, gather round. We got value going once, truth going twice, sold for a song. That's right, folks. Rights signed away, data given away, pennies on the play. Publishing, gone. Credit, missing. Ownership, kiss it goodbye. 50 pages of catch-22s, no dice. You can't eat a like, a follow, or a view. Sold for a song. But wait now, hold your bids, hold your breath. Here comes the truth louder than the bass line. Time to take it back, where the artists rise, the system shakes, and the silence finally breaks.
Welcome to Sold for a Song, the transformative podcast that dissects the music industry's long-standing practice of undervaluing its most essential contributors. Yes, we're talking songwriters and artists. In each episode, we'll delve into the journey of recognizing and elevating the true worth and value of music creators, discover how the industry has exploited creators, and learn actionable strategies to revolutionize this trend and take control of your career. Hello, podcast land. I'm Terrance Sawchuk, but you can call me Terry. After 30 plus years in the trenches of the music industry, trust me, I've seen it all. The highs, the heartbreaks, and the resilience it takes to succeed as a creator. Here's what I've learned. Awakening your self-worth, owning and leveraging your value, and streamlining the process to free up the time we need to do what we most love to do, which is create. That's what stands between you and the freedom we're all chasing. All right, before we dive in, if you believe in empowering artists and redefining what it means to thrive creatively, do me a favor, subscribe, leave a quick review, and share this episode with someone who truly needs it. That one click helps more than you know. And if you want to go deeper, join me at terrancesawchuk.com to be a part of the community and follow all of my endeavors for exclusive content and updates. Hello, podcast land. Welcome back to Sold for a Song and another amazing episode. This week we have Dr. Connie Tomaino. She goes by Connie, and she is an executive director and co-founder of the Institute for Music and Neurological Function. She is a music therapist, and not just a music therapist, but an actual pioneer in music therapy. Dr. Tomaino is both the executive director and co-founder of the Institute for Music and Neurological Function, and formerly vice president for music therapy at Center Light Health System, internationally known for her research in the clinical application of music and neurological rehabilitation. Dr. Tomaino has lectured on music therapy throughout the United States and in Argentina, Australia, South Africa, Italy, England, and Canada. A past president of the American Association for Music Therapy, Dr. Tomaino was honored at the United Nations with the Music Therapists for Peace Award of Accomplishment, committed to fostering the broadcast access to music therapies for people in need the world over. Dr. Tomaino's work with the Institute for Music and Neurological Function has advanced the state of the art and science of music therapy for individuals suffering the effects of brain trauma, including stroke, or who are afflicted with such degenerative neurological diseases as Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and other forms of dementia. Dr. Tomaino's work has been featured on national programs, including 48 Hours and 60 Minutes, on international programs, including the BBC, and in books on healing and health, including A Matter of Dignity by Andrew Poddick, The Mozart Effect by Don Campbell, Age Protectors, Sounds of Healing by Mitchell Gaynor, and Anthropologists on Mars by Oliver Sacks. MD Dr. Sacks' book Musicophilia is dedicated to her. Prior to earning a Master's and Doctor of Arts in Music Therapy from New York University, Dr. Tomaino graduated with a BA in Music Performance with a minor in Psychology and Science from the State University of New York at Stony Brook. She joined the Bronx, New York-based Center Light Health System in 1980 and soon became one of the foremost proponents of the emerging field of music therapy. 15 years later, Dr. Tomaino helped found the IMNF. Today, in addition to her work with the IMNF, Dr. Tomaino is is on the faculty of the Albert Einstein College of Medicine, Lehman College CUNY, and the ATTP2 team of the National Parkinson's Foundation, a founding board member and vice president of the International Association for Music and Medicine. Dr. Tomaino was a super panelist for the Grammy in the Schools program and has served on the certification board of music therapists, the Journal of Music Therapy, and on the advisory boards for the Center for Alternative Research and the Kessler Institute and the International Journal of Arts Medicine. Dr. Tomaino is the recipient of numerous honors and accolades, including a Touchstone Award for Women in Music for her visionary spirit, the 2004 Music as Power Award from the IMNF, and the Zella Bronfman Butler Award for the UGA Federation of New York in partnership with the GE and ZB Butler for outstanding work on behalf of individuals with physical, developmental, and learning disabilities. Most recently, Dr. Connie Tomaino was honored as one of the 3 wise women by the National Organization of Italian American Women and Lifetime Achievement Award for the American Association for Music Therapy. So how's that for a bio? I'm not used to interviewing underachievers on my podcast, but I'm willing to make an exception for Dr. Connie Tomaino. And that's why she is the perfect guest for Sold for a Song. First of all, I just want to welcome you and thank you for joining me on Sold for a Song, the podcast. I know it's a busy time of the year for everyone, but especially somebody like yourself during the holidays. I can't imagine how busy you've been. And I just wanted to thank you for taking the time to sit with us. And it's probably a slightly different music-related podcast than you're used to, where what I try to do here is try to bring the sort of true value of music, and because the battle that we have as creators and songwriters and musicians, and as you know, is a long fought war. It actually goes back hundreds of years. If you've heard the term, oh, that person bought it for a song.
Right.
It's actually kind of pre-Shakespeare. So there's been a long history of undervaluing the actual people that create the music.
Sure.
And my goal is to just sort of pull back the curtain on that, and then you bring excellent expertise to the area of where music really does bring value. And it's just an honor for me to have you here. So thank you for joining us.
Sure.
So, yeah, can you give us the backstory? I mean, I'd love to hear your backstory, and as well as the backstory of just music therapy as a practice, when that came about, and what your introduction was to it, and so forth.
Well, I'll talk about the field of music therapy first, because obviously music and health and healing has been part of society since the beginning of sound production. So, medieval, prehistoric people, different traditions using sound and healing has been part of culture throughout. But the field of music therapy as a profession within the United States originated in the 1950s. Okay. And this is when both doctors, psychiatrists, educators realized that there was something about music that would reach people, either children who are language delayed or developmentally delayed, or veterans with PTSD, when they were exposed to music, they became more alive and more, I won't say functional, but doctors and educators were seeing potential in people that seemed to have lost that potential, and music seemed to bring that out. And so in the early 50s, people had gotten together to see if there was a way to train musicians to have a more therapeutic approach, to be able to really create experiences that would be therapeutic and goal-oriented. And so the field was established to not only create the academic programs that would train musicians, but then to set up standards and different guidelines. And so officially it became created then, and then eventually there was other additional training that music therapists had, and now in the United States, music therapists are board certified. And so if you see the credential MTBC, that is a music therapist board certified, and it is the basic entry-level credential for music therapist.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, for myself, I've been in the field close to 50 years at this point, and started out actually as a pre-med student in college. I was a science geek as a kid. Also played, I took accordion lessons as a kid too, some music, and played trumpet in high school. So, and I still play. I'm a professional trumpet player. But it was when I was in college, I wanted to take trumpet lessons from the professor, even though I was a science major, but I had to become a music major to do that. And so I double majored in music and sciences. And as I'm taking the music courses, I realized I had never really been exposed to classical music or this whole, genre of contemporary classical music, and fell in love with it, and was totally, and even some of the old masters like Bach and Mozart that I really wasn't aware of. And I was absolutely emotionally blown away by this music. And now I had a dilemma, because I was falling in love with music in a way I didn't think possible. I knew I wanted to do something in the field of healthcare service. And it was in my junior year that I found that there was a field called music therapy. And by some good luck, and at this point I'm a trumpet performance major as well as science, and by some good fortune, the band director at Stony Brook University, where I was going to college, was also the band director at NYU, New York University. And NYU had just started a master's degree program in music therapy. And I literally just transitioned from one to the other within the week of graduation. And my training and a lot of music therapy training, at least back then, was either related to special ed or to music psychotherapy. But when I started working with people with end stages of dementia in my clinical training, and saw these responses in people who were written off as being unreachable and non-responsive, people who were agitated or people who were catatonic, people who technically we were told had no cognitive function left. Okay. When I played and sang a song that I think they should have known, some of them started singing the words to the song, and others woke up and were actively responding to it. And so my science geek brain said, well, if they have no cognitive function, how is their brain processing vibrations in space and recognizing it as a song that they knew? So there has to be something going on to allow that to happen. And then again, by some good fortune, a full-time music therapy job became available in my neighborhood at the place with Dr. Oliver Sacks, who was known for his original book, Awakenings, that became a Grammy-nominated film with Robin Williams and Bob De Niro. He had just experienced, 10 years prior, his patients who were unable to move because of this catastrophic neurologic disease, who could jump out of their wheelchairs and start dancing when rhythm was played. So he was very interested in rhythm and music being able to animate the muscular motor system. And these people, I was interested in music and brain function and memory, and how do the aspects of music trigger response in people who seem to be unresponsive. So he and I became best friends. I worked, I was full-time as a music therapist, and so people I was working with very intensely started to recover function. He realized there was something there, and together we garnered the interest of our board of directors to realize that we really were onto something new. And our goal, with the help of the board of directors, to establish the Institute for Music and Neurologic Function, which is now celebrating its 30th anniversary, was to bring together the emerging field of neuroscience, which was new in the 1980s, neuroscience and clinical music therapists, so we could learn from each other, so we could pose questions to the scientists to help us understand music in the brain, that the scientists could help us understand the nuance of auditory perception and deficits created by brain injury or developmental delays, and how we could transfer that knowledge into real-time music experiences that could enhance the quality of life and recovery of function, or the development of function in individuals who could benefit from this.
My goodness. And I mean, to be talking to an actual pioneer, it's not like this an interest you found. I mean, you played a massive role in the evolution of this and still do, obviously. And you talk about being the science geek. So, I mean, what exactly is happening to the brain from music?
Yeah, it's so exciting. I think, and your audience as being creatives know the overwhelming effect that music has to both themselves and to the people they create music for. But for us to appreciate a song means that almost every part of our brain is actively engaged in some level. There's not like a music center of the brain.
Right.
The only thing that may be specific, there's certain areas that are responsible for time and rhythmic processing, so of the nuance of pulse and time ordered information. But that's also spread out throughout the brain. The perception of pitch, the actual frequency that we hear in a note, so the 440, the A440, that actual pitch is located in a special area of the brain in the temporal lobe. Mm-hmm. And so if I've had patients who've had strokes in that area and actually lose the perception of melody. They can't hear tone at all. But that's, that's a rare type thing. People do lose some of the frequencies of the hearing, and as they get older, things may sound out of tune, or they, may not have the fullness of sound. But just the acoustic processing of music requires multiple networks of the brain to work together for us to understand that. And then as soon as we start having experiences, so from even before the time we're born, rhythm processing is already happening in utero. So before the fetus is even born, pattern recognition and sound recognition is developed. And that's important because being able to parse and process sound in our environment is needed both not only for survival, but to bond with important people in our lives and to learn our language and to learn the safe and dangerous aspects of our environment. And we then respond in emotional ways that form even tighter bonds with that information. So the mother's lullaby becomes a sense of safety and healing for us at a very early age, or maybe not just a mother, but somebody close who's providing that nurturing type of care for us. It could be anybody, but that sort of very gentle, medium range, slow rhythm voice becomes a safety net. And it's interesting because we know that if somebody is, an adult is having an anxiety attack or being aggressive, that speaking in a very slow, rhythmic, low, medium range voice could actually subdue that person.
No kidding.
So we're sort of programmed from an early, we create these neural programs based on our experience and based on, sort of pre-existing genetic programming, if you will, for these types of responses. And then we can use that information in a way that helps people to. And then also from a very, very young age, songs and music that are associated with events in our lives or people in our lives or relationships in our lives become sort of hardwired into automatic emotional responses, so much so that just like the first note of a song can trigger either a positive or negative memory and feelings for sure.
Yeah.
So that those all get very integrally developed within us, to the point that it's hard to undo them once they're created.
Incredible.
So it really requires the whole brain to be able to process this at any time.
Was it Pythagorean that said, I mean, some believe that the actual universe is a song, it's a frequency.
Yeah. Sure, the frequencies of the planets, when there's recordings of those frequencies, that when they're, moved up to audible levels, there's electrical frequencies coming out of plants that can produce music. There's the codes in the DNA and our molecular structure, if you put into a software program, could produce some pretty interesting music. So, when you think of music and when you think about sound, it's all pattern processing. And one of the reasons, the way we got scientists back, 30 plus years ago, interested in studying music in the brain, was that they were just beginning to understand chaos theory and integrated complex information, and how complex processing allows us to have a total experience, a singular experience based on the combination of all these different stimuli. And so they realized that music was one of those complex stimuli that they could try to understand as a way of looking at how these neural networks talk to each other, to be able to produce our experience of music and consequently other complex systems in the brain.
Incredible. I have a little mantra I tried teaching or coaching, up and coming artists, or even existing creatives, how it's almost our purpose to discover this thing inside of us as creators, but the process isn't done until we share it, with the purpose of sort of awakening the same revelation or some sort of awakening in the listener. And that seems to be the process. Mm. So how do you discern how you're going to treat somebody, or what music you're going to apply, that kind of thing?
Sure. So, music therapy and the application of music is really quite broad. Okay. Music therapists will use, when I talk about music, I'm really talking about many aspects of music. It could be the components of music, like melody or frequency, or rhythm, in a very prescriptive, directive way, to help somebody coordinate movement or to improve the sound of their voice, or to help with self-expression. So it's like sort of a really directed use of music to help somebody organize their function. But there's also the creative and interpersonal use of music in real time that music therapists do, to allow somebody to reach deep inside them, to unveil areas of their life that may be blocking them. So it could be, if somebody has depression, or somebody has anxiety or fear, or if a child is pre-language, that's an exploratory process where music is improvised or exchanged in real time to draw the person fuller into the experience, and the music therapist is trained to sort of decipher what that music means and how it can further be explored to allow that individual to find out information about themselves or things that may be blocking them. So you can think about songs or music or sound that may reveal something that's holding somebody back, or
like your own little musical ayahuasca journey.
Exactly. And then there's a very, I do a lot of work with people who have cognitive impairment related to Alzheimer's disease,
right, of course,
and dementia. With those individuals, songs of personal importance, songs that have stayed with them throughout their lives, are still very much part of them, reaching them in a way that maybe words or even visual images can't attain anymore. So many times we'll use those autobiographical songs as a way of making a connection, helping them regain a connection to who they are and their lived history, so they can stay connected and feel that there's still something that they can hold on to and relate to.
That's incredible. You mentioned something in another podcast that you were on. Tell us how the brain actually doesn't slow down as we age. In fact, seems the opposite.
Yeah, it changes. It's interesting that when you're learning a new task, it requires a lot of brain function to sort of integrate what those skills are that you need. As you become an expert, so if you're a professional musician, obviously your brain isn't figuring out where your fingers go or what key the music is in. That's already now overlearned and simplified, so you can be more creative in your expression, and it frees you up to do that. In some sense, one part of the brain not slows down, but it doesn't have to work as hard because we've already achieved a level of mastery. But another part of the brain is working very actively to enhance the creativity of the moment. So it's always this play. I think what I meant when I had said that is that it used to be when I was taking biology, we were taught that the brain starts losing cells by the time you're like 20-something years old. Anything you do is going to destroy brain cells. So whether you drink or take drugs or whatever, you're constantly going to lose brain cells. And as you age, you just normally lose those cells. But what we do know now is, you can damage your brain for sure. But as you learn something new, and you could be 110, if you learn something new, your brain has now enhanced a new set of networks, a new pathways and interconnections to allow that skill to be preserved. So every time we learn something that we carry over, so any preserved skill or a memory of some type, that's a new network of information that's been formed that stays with us. And so as we age, we may slow down in the time it takes to process something or recall something, but we also may speed up in other ways because information that's overlearned becomes very easy and at our fingertips, to come to mind. So
that's amazing. Well, you touched on a few treatments, but maybe tell us a little bit about specifically treating trauma.
Sure. Well, I do some work with veterans with PTSD, and it's interesting because anybody who's been, at least with the veterans that tell me, is that especially with the ones who are in the Marines or Special Corps, that they in their training they're basically told to separate their body from their mind, because if they feel what's in their body, they won't be able to think clearly. They'll always be in this sort of a fight or flight type mode, so they have to separate that. And they become really good at doing that to the point that they don't realize that they're internalizing anger and fear. And that when they do leave the active service, they're carrying around these blocked feelings that then manifest in things like, aggressive behavior or withdrawal or quick responses to a sound that may trigger something. And it happens, it may happen frequently or infrequently, but they may not be able to regulate that or even separate from that because it's now become an automatic response. And they don't realize that it's all emanating from these repressed feelings. When we had started a music therapy program for these vets, and we had this little test that we do where we ask them to say how they feel before the session starts. And everybody was saying, I feel great and everything's good, whatever. And then we start improvising and start drumming and doing some other things. And at the end of the session, they said, I feel horrible. I said, what do you mean? Thought we were having a good time. And they said, no. I started feeling things and then I'm not supposed to feel. and that's when they told me the story about how they would very trained to be protective of not integrating body sensations with mental sensations. And so as we were able to start reflecting and exploring what some of those bodily feelings were and some of the mental images that come with it, they were able to better deal with those things that may trigger or the horrible experiences that they had that they needed to let go of or to separate some of those spontaneous but very negative feelings that were holding them back.
I mean, what an incredible career for you to. It's just you must get so much back from this practice.
Oh my goodness, yeah, no, it's amazing. Children who are language delayed. We know now that it's because they have many of them don't have developed a rhythm perception. So remember I had said how we're sort of born with this automatic ability to process rhythm. But children who are language delayed just can't process patterns of sound. And because of that, they can't process patterns of speech. And so they may, if somebody's speaking to them, it may just sound like noise with no sense. It's almost like being in a foreign country because you can't process the words. But once they start to, and so one of the techniques is to have them be able to copy different rhythm patterns and different complex, first simple and then complex ones. And as they start developing this pattern perception, then the parsing of words starts to become more noticeable. So something like that, or the person, the person with Parkinson's disease who can't walk on their own anymore, or freeze and shuffle, how rhythm can absolutely organize the brain in real time, in the moment, to allow them to have freedom of movement, as long as the rhythm is turning on and organizing those motor networks in their brain.
A little gem. I mean, this needs to be
accessible to everybody.
Absolutely.
It should be. We're fighting really hard to get music therapy reimbursed in insurance throughout the country, both for mental health and for medical, treatments, as well as early childhood development. This should be something, there's enough science that backs it up. The NIH has helped us in the past, focusing and supporting research efforts to show the efficacy of the integration of neuroscience and clinical music therapy to advance care in all these areas. But we need to get the word out. I appreciate podcasts like yours and that educate people who wouldn't normally think about this, to realize the importance of music as a basic necessity in our health and wellness.
I mean, what comes to mind is, here in Nashville, be somebody like, Senator Blackburn, who's been, a great advocate for the music industry. And of course, with the Sick Kids Hospital in Memphis.
Sure.
There's no shortage of need for music here, even just in the state of Tennessee alone. So, that's something I'm definitely going to keep in the back of my brain going forward. And when I get the opportunity to speak to people like this, to bring this up, again, it just all goes back to the value, actually the true value of music. I'm in the process of creating a YouTube, like a mini series or docu-series, which will be sort of the visual version of the podcast, where I, as an example, come to New York and visit you, and we look at what's actually happening with these people. Or I'm going down to the Delta in Mississippi to see the effects of music and work songs on slaves and the migration up to the north, and et cetera. So, I mean, it's such a deep, rich topic. It's literally as deep as it is wide.
Sure.
It was something I see a lot in the music industry from my perspective, and I am definitely affected by this as well, is the topic of neurodiversity, ADHD, dyslexia, which I haven't been diagnosed, but you can take it to the bank that I am as ADHD and dyslexic as one could be.
I think I probably fit into that category too.
There you go.
And
Well,
there's no reason why I would have been diagnosed as that as a kid, because I was, a very successful student and stuff, but my mind is on fire all the time.
yes.
And I'm one of those creative people who's constantly in a million different, internally, in a million different directions. And I had no idea that was an ADHD characteristic.
Well, it's a superpower, really, in a way. I mean, I've followed a lot of people like I don't know if you listen to Dr. Gabor Mate, and his sort of theory on neurodiversity is usually stems back to some kind of way that the brain was affected between that sensitive area between the age of 0 and 7, we'll say, and well, often trauma plays a big role, and it's kind of how you cope with things at an early stage while the brain is forming, more importantly. And then he goes on to say, 90 or 95% of how you live your life from there is from those frameworks. And I've seen a common theme. I think it's like 51% of each home in America can play an instrument or sing. So there's nothing new or impressive or anything about being able to sing or play a musical instrument. Then why Mozart? Why Prince? Why Ray Charles? And then when you start doing the deep dive, this theme of neurodiversity seems to be coming up a lot. And it's like, it's not just a story that they want to get out, but there's this ability to be able to tell a story in a way that even the subject can't tell. Yeah. And there's these little tiny superpowers. And I think that's what my discovery is what the difference is between what makes, an incredible pianist that's an accountant or whatever. And then you've got this incredible artist, somebody like Prince or Mozart would be a great example to say, that's just not normal. It's the way that brain is operating. And I see similarities there.
In all those cases, and I think one of the challenges, too, and I think where we've missed the boat is by trying to pigeonhole people into this, at least in the education system, pigeonhole people into a box of what's normal. And I think we all have a spectrum of ability. And I think those very seminal early years of our lives is really dependent on our environment and nurturing people in that environment that see the gifts that child possesses and has a way to build upon them. For example, if Mozart grew up on a farm and his father wasn't a famous teacher and composer and his sister wasn't taking violin lessons while he was a year or two old, would he have been the great musician and composer that he was? Prince too, just different environmental things. Or does somebody who should have been incredibly gifted end up having tremendous mental health issues because they were contained?
Yeah.
And told they couldn't do something that they were so passionate that their body and their mind just ached for. So I think as a society, we have a responsibility to nurture each child in ways that allows them to build upon the gifts that they have. And I mean, some people can be born with a lot of challenges and deficits, but even at that point, knowing where their strengths are and where the challenges are to be able to do something rather than just to create, one size fits all. And I don't think that helps. It doesn't help our society. It doesn't help our human existence by having everybody sort of conform.
I agree 100%. And, when you do see people making the leaps for change in that area, my stepson was on the autism spectrum, extremely high functioning. For the most part, you wouldn't notice anything. He's doing exceptionally well at the University of Colorado right now. And he spent a year in Europe last year. But he also attended the Curry Ingram School here in Nashville, which is basically a bunch of doctors of education who left their regular jobs to work for $35,000 a year or whatever to come to Curry Ingram, where there's like 5 students per class, And the president of the Students' Council will be like nonverbal, speaking through an iPad.
Right.
And then I go back to see when I was in school, and it was a nightmare. School was a nightmare for me. And anyone that is from this well, not everybody obviously, but my experience was extremely challenging. So I noticed this common theme. There's a common theme of, they call it, mental health in the music industry with artists, and you just see a lot of attention and events, towards that. And I think, is it just that simple? Is it just maybe it's that neurodiverse topic that we all come like salmon upstream to spawn? We all find our way to being creatives, and the reason we're talking about these mental health issues is because maybe that's what the common thread is. I don't know.
Yeah, there's this idea of the building blocks of executive function and how those develop in early ages. So things like mental flexibility and awareness of others and things like that. People who tend to have mental health issues usually have challenges with executive function. They could be, very rigid in some regards. And there's questions about whether allowing more creative expression in early ages can actually create this very flexible mental ability that becomes the building block for executive function. And being able to parse, as you get older, the better you are at understanding different aspects of things or different options for things, the more able you are to make good decisions in your life and see, the whole picture instead of one tiny thing. And whether being able to create more or allow for more creativity early on actually helps that child develop mentally at a better level than somebody who was stifled at an early age. And that stifling could be traumatic. It could be hidden trauma in the sense that somebody held back feelings, emotions that then leads to mental health issues too. And it could also then not damage, but change or slow down the way those brain sensory networks integrate, because they've been stifled in those early developmental years. And that all then builds up to how what kind of challenges an adult may have early on.
Yeah. I remember getting to a point in sort of my late 20s where it was, I'd say, borderline nervous breakdown, anxiety attacks from overworking and probably just trauma and things catching up to me over time. And I was very fortunate to have a safety net on the friendship and creative level in the name of Alanis Morissette, where I got to work with her for a number of years. We helped each other in many, many ways during that period, but she handed me my first sort of meditation cassette. So here, go and sit with this. And the interesting thing was when I sat and did this meditation, this guided meditation, and got to that place of calm and the place you're trying to get to when you're meditating, of course. And I thought, oh, this is how it feels when I play piano. What's happening? What was I experiencing there?
Yeah. So it was you would all that noise in your brain was being sidelined by a very focused effort, or that free flow that happens when you play, when you're in that zone, in that moment when you're not self-regulate. In fact, there's been some scientific studies of this, is that when we're in that flow state, we're actually not self-monitoring right and wrong or mistakes,
right.
or holding ourselves back in a way and saying, I shouldn't do that. And all that sort of rumination that happens in your brain stops. And so people who, that's what people with ADHD or other things, when they're in that zone, whether it's painting or performing or creating, all that extraneous noise and anxiety just gets turned off instantaneously. Meditation does it because we're focused on sort of clearing our minds in that moment and maybe focusing on a word or on a mantra or whatever that is. But that super focus on this one particular thing then sort of turns off all that noise and can bring you into a sense of wholeness and peace, mental peace, and maybe physical peace.
Yeah. Amazing. And then there's, the actual feeling of what you're getting as you're performing, as you say. I mean, this is what attracts you. You get to that state, and this is the main reason why people, why we write songs. It becomes your therapy. And then, as I mentioned at the top of the podcast, it also, I think there's a purpose, and our purpose, part of our own kind of unique blueprint, is to awaken something in someone else. Your skill is to make music. And I truly believe we have our own purpose here to awaken something else in others so that they have the same revelation and pass it on, pay it forward kind of deal. I had somebody reached out to an artist and I about an album we did years ago. It was he was sort of a young Frank Sinatra, artist named Matt Dusk, a good friend of mine from Toronto, Canada, where I'm from. And this lady reached out to us saying how her husband was a retired police officer, and he hadn't spoken since his partner was killed on the job. So he retired immediately. So his kids had never heard him speak since they were like 6 years old or something. I'm trying to remember the story. Now, she used to play Sinatra for him all the time, and that was the only thing that would sort of soothe him. He wouldn't speak, but he would just sit, I guess, in the living room and was kind of soothed and relaxed by the experience. But when Sinatra died, he went into another sort of funk. Oof. And then it wasn't until, I guess, this record came out in 2006-ish. And, we get this random email from her saying, he has been in this funk since Sinatra passed away. And I just want to let you know that I found this CD and this young Sinatra type, and I started playing it for him. So some of these songs on this album were some of the dearest to me in my career. And I mean, these are just like cut your heart wide open. These are, very real, raw songs and experiences for me, at least. And she said that he started speaking for the first time because of this album.
Wow.
And started talking to now his grandchildren. So his children have got their own families. So they haven't heard him speak in all these years. And now the grandchildren are hearing him speak for the first time. Yeah. So that's when I was reminded why, you think you're just writing a song. Yeah. And I try to, teach young artists and say, you're not just writing a song. I mean, you're literally playing a role, like we said at the top of the podcast, that connects right back to the heavens and the universe and frequencies, and, and then, again, what we're trying to do here with the podcast is something I just wanted to kind of read off. But when you look at the historical reality for music creators being over-leveraged, undercompensated, and often paying for it with their own health and their well-being, it's easy to argue that often they have a limited value compared to what they're putting out to everybody else, which is kind of ironic that the people that are making the music that are living in that ecosystem of being over leveraged and undervalued. I just find it ironic, and that's what I'm trying to help with. So with this series, the YouTube series that I'll be doing, I'll be traveling, and that's one of the things I'll be trying to point out, to say, well, obviously there's not much value in music if we sit down and talk to the creators and we talk to them about their health and their mindset and their bank account and how many years they've been doing this. I'm talking all kinds of people that have platinum awards in their wall, whatever. And almost sarcastically saying, or the juxtaposition to say, well, there can't be much value in music. And then that's why I wanted you as a guest. That's why I want, to be able to tell the stories of Strange Fruit and Billie Holiday and how lynching was, was tackled.
The big question is the value, our value in society in general. Creatives have already, you think about artists who don't make any, or maybe they make some money, but it's the person who sells the art that always ends up making the millions. It's not the Van Goghs in their lifetime.
I think that goes back to a lot of the history. The people see the value of it and they jump in. But the creative mind, like you say, maybe it is a little bit more of that neurodiverse, and they can't, or they have more of a challenge managing their business, managing the math. They just want to do the creative part of it. You don't have that luxury in this life.
If there was a way of funding, or because obviously the value of being creative supports the wealth of a nation, because that's the baseline of how everything gets done. So there needs to be a way of generally funding those essential people, whether they're the artist or the musician or the poet, whatever, because that is the substance by which all the inventions and things get built upon.
Yeah, exactly.
So
well, I'm going to be tackling. I've got a sort of a coaching program coming in the near future, where I'll be sort of tackling things from a standpoint of more self-worth, not like how do you market your music and that kind of thing. It's more of a let's go back to basics and let's fix us at the core first, and purpose and worth and value, and let's start there.
No, it's true. Even music therapists, I think, being able to say what that value is per service is essential, because we're on par with other, healthcare professions and psychologists, and yet somehow, because it's music, the people who seek the services don't think it's worth as much or whatever. So that's been the challenge too. So I think you're right in helping people to understand the value that they bring to their craft.
Yeah. Self-worth. It comes down to self-worth.
People make the analogies with car mechanics and plumbers and stuff. That if you get an $800 bill from your plumber, you don't think twice about it. And yet, if we do an hour of service and ask for $200 or $500 or whatever, people are outraged that it should cost that much. And how many musicians play in pubs and other places for the door when they should be part of the...
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I'm working hard on that to change that dialogue. And, I remember seeing, was a violinist outside of Publix, the grocery store here in Nashville, and I just thought, my gosh, instead of busking, it's almost like begging for money. It's like, just go talk to the manager of the store and say, look, I just want to play for an hour at lunchtime. Pay me an hourly wage, like I worked here, and I'll come here 3 days a week, that kind of thing. But I could see the mood on people's faces change as they walked into the store because of what she was presenting there. And on that topic, then, how can artists get involved in what you do and music therapy in their area?
Sure. So music therapy, like I mentioned, is a profession. And so to be a music therapist, obviously you have to have a degree in music therapy and get board certified. But there is a role that musicians and other artists can play in understanding the therapeutic aspects of music. For example, we just created a certificate program for non-music therapists to learn how to use music in senior healthcare. So musicians who play in nursing homes or play in their senior centers in their neighborhoods, if they want to learn more about how to use it more purposefully or understand some of the nuances of that, then they could get certified by us, and it's not expensive at all.
No, that's something I would do for certified.
Sure. So things like that, and there's organizations, Musicians on Call, other organizations, they offer opportunities for musicians to get involved in healthcare. Songwriting for Soldiers is an organization that partners songwriters, and probably in Nashville, because I think they're there. Pairing songwriters with a psychotherapist or music therapist, and veterans who need to, find a way of voicing their hidden fears or traumas that they want to get rid of or deal with in a more productive way. So there are partnerships for sure.
Is that through your Institute for Music and Neurologic Function?
So the senior healthcare training is through us.
Okay.
And you can find it on our website.
Is there more that you can tell us about the Institute? Is there anything else?
Sure. So if you go to IMNF, so the initials of the Institute for Music and Neurologic Function, there's lots of information on the website. The training information is there. I have a book called Music Has Power that talks a lot about the nuance of music and health and in senior care and development. So all that information can be found on our website.
Wonderful. And there's a contact email or
Sure.
somebody's trying to reach out to you.
Yes.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for taking the time, especially during the holiday season. And I look forward to chatting again in the future. I'll probably hit you up when I go to do my YouTube series and where it's more of a visual experience. And I'd love to see what you guys do there. And where are you in Manhattan or where?
No, we're just northward in Mount Vernon, New York.
Mount Vernon?
Yeah, so not too far
Okay.
from the city.
Thank you so much for taking the time
Pleasure.
today. I really
Great
appreciate
talking
it.
to you.
Okay. Take care.
Right, bye.
If today's episode lit a fire in you, don't let it fade. Subscribe to Sold for a Song, leave a review, and be the spark that helps others discover their own worth. And if you're ready to go deeper, visit TerranceSawchuk.com. Let's build this movement together.